This, folks, is going to be our 2022 positional preview episode. So right now, if you're joining us, we're going through all of the positions. We're going to go through some battles. We're going to go through some guys who are certified, solidified starters, maybe some guys you should be on the lookout for as the season progresses for each position. And while you're watching this, be sure to comment on our video below. Who are you excited to see? What position battle are you excited to see? Loved seeing the comments this week on our bold prediction segment. Had some great predictions from the fans, as well as telling us where we were right and wrong, mostly telling Matt where he was wrong. Matt, before we get started, defend your honor, because people were roasting you in the comments.
Roasting.
Yeah.
Roasting. I was on over a fire pit as I was reading those comments. And listen, rightfully so. I should have done a little bit more research on my end to look at DG's actual TD to intercept ratio, which is like 74 to something. It's like a 5+1. So
yeah, it's not hard to look up. Like
it's not
hard.
I could go to Google and type it right in and I get in less than 10 seconds. So yeah. I appreciate the viewers keeping me honest.
Good.
I should bump mine up instead of 2-1 to 5-1, just to make it a little bit more of a bolder prediction. So
is this a revision?
This is if I'm allowed to make one mulligan.
Okay, fine.
One mulligan.
Breakfast ball. Go ahead.
Breakfast ball. Let's revise it to 5-1 for my bold prediction for DG.
5-1.
Matt, you came in so hot last week about just like Mark being so wrong.
But like
but nobody called me out on it except for the viewers. So I'm
say
okay with
5-1.
Everyone called you out
on 2-1 so fast in the spring. I was so
everyone. Everyone said you were in.
Hey, remember that Marcus Major one? Mark, remember that one?
Yeah, I think mine's gonna.
We're about to jump into it today.
Pretty correct. Oh, all right, let's get right.
All right, boys, we're gonna start with the offense. Let's go ahead and get. No, you're all good. Listen, how many times has Boston barked on this podcast or done something? So we're going to start with the quarterback position just because it's the easiest. Dylan Gabriel, he's your starter and he's your solidified starter. Been a lot of talk by a lot of OU experts, and I won't use quotes because they are OU experts, but they've said that if Dylan Gabriel goes down, this team's in a whole heaping lot of trouble. And I tend to agree with that because if the reported backup is going to be Davis Bevel, then you're in trouble. It's got to be Dylan Gabriel. Like, there's no shot that even if Gabriel goes down for 2 games, that automatically is going to feel like 2 losses for me, unless you're playing like Kansas or maybe Tech.
It's a significant drop-off, right? And we all know that DG is the guy. He was the guy from day one. Once he transferred in, OU knew this is our guy. I mean, he threw for 8,000 yards, 70 touchdowns at UCF. He's got the most experience. He's got a connection with Jeff Lebby in the system. This is our guy. And you're right. It only takes one play, God forbid, for something to happen. And then all of a sudden, it's next man up. But that's truly, I think, one thing we truly don't know who the next guy is. Is it Nick Evers? Is it Davis Bettle? Like you just said, the guy that I think maybe could step in is my boy General Booty from the JUCO transfer. And the only reason, just because he led JUCO in passing yards per game, he was 4th in touchdowns, and he's got, again, I don't know, JUCO experience, but I don't know, maybe General Booty's the guy that maybe could step in and, solidify that second spot. But it is a significant drop-off for sure after DG. That is worrisome.
Mark, Ryan, your thoughts on who would be a solid backup or even just a serviceable one at that?
Yeah, so all the reports out of practice are that it's Davis Bevel who's kind of getting those reps, right? He's kind of solidified at the 2, and then maybe Ralph Rucker at the 3. No, Micah Bowen.
It was Bowen. Yeah, I heard Bowen.
Has jumped in, which is, hey, cool for him. He's been around forever, it feels like, and hasn't ever hit the field. But yeah, I tend to think, I mean, I'm sure they're seeing something with Bevel, right? But I'm also surprised that Booty hasn't kind of taken that backup role by the reins a little bit more. He actually led JUCO colleges in passing last year as a true freshman. threw 27 touchdowns. He had a very successful season. And sure, sometimes it doesn't scale up. Sometimes that doesn't translate in the same kind of way, but he has game experience in a different way than I think Davis Bevel does. So that's just where I would land on it personally. And I am interested to see where it shakes out. I hope I never see where it shakes out, actually. But
well, I mean, Bevel's getting like the Blake Bell treatment, right? Like, I mean, he's a huge dude, 6'6", like 223. Like he's gonna be, he might be even like used in those short like goal line formations
Definitely
that we
could
used to use Bell in all the time. So I mean, I understand why that could be considered like the backup, but if Gabriel actually goes down, like, does he have the skill set to be able to do it all? I don't know. I don't think so, probably, but like we're gonna have to figure it out. Like Mark said, we really don't want this to happen. We hope this doesn't happen.
And there's in my mind, there's no position. Obviously, this is gonna sound like duh, obviously, but there's no position that's more important to this team than the quarterback position. This particular team, there's no position that's more important than the quarterback. Because you look at it back in the day, you know, when Baker was in his heyday and Kyler was his backup, if you lost Baker, Kyler comes in and you still feel kind of okay. Like he's not Baker Mayfield at that point, but you were still excited. Dylan Gabriel, if he goes down, you got a whole bunch of dudes who haven't done anything. And that's pretty stressful.
I mean, we lost our 2 5-star quarterbacks last year, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is not surprising that this is kind of our quote unquote transition year when it comes to quarterbacks, right? We have Nick Evers came in and that's awesome, but we have Jackson Arnold coming in next year. I mean, I'm going to feel a lot better about this situation next year than I do this year. And I think probably most of us will. But like this year is a transitional year for us, even though we're talking about how great it's going to be. Technically, it is transitional. And we see that probably the most in our quarterback room.
See, good point. Dylan Gabriel's got 3 years of eligibility left, though.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing is I'm wondering. It's weird, right? Because he's not as talented as Jackson Arnold. He's not as talented as probably Nick Evers. But 3 years of eligibility left. If he comes in and just takes over this year, what's it look like next year with Jackson Arnold coming into camp? And the year after that, when he's got one more year of eligibility, and Jackson is looking to the next year for his own football draft.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. I don't know. I'm projecting way too far out there, but the 3 years of eligibility complicates things. That's all. I'm expecting great things out of Dylan this year. He's going to get a lot of passes. So I think the stats are going to be there for sure.
I don't think I realized he was only 5'11".
He's small.
Yeah. Like that's smaller than Baker, small.
And not fast.
Yeah.
And our O-line last year, not the best. We're hoping for improvement this year.
They're going to be the best this year.
According to you, Mace.
I know, according to me. Let's move on to the running backs. We'll talk some running backs now. Eric Gray is the guy who is the starter right now. We can say that. He's going to be the guy who gets the bulk of the carries to start the season at least. We all have different guys that we love in this group. I tend to believe that it's going to be a 1-2 punch with Eric Gray and Marcus Major, and Marcus Major being kind of the third down change of pace guy, and Eric continue to be that guy on first and second down who can catch passes out of the backfield. That's how I feel. Anybody else feel differently or more excited about some other guys in this roster spot?
I know Mark feels differently.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did this last week, I guess. Yeah, last week with Marcus Major. I think he is going to end up taking the Lions' share of the role of the carries. You know, I think he is going to end up taking that first, second down, maybe even third down role, and Eric Gray will be the one spelling him. I think you look at body type, he's just more built for taking carry after carry after carry. I looked up Ole Miss's stats last year, and they ran over 100 more rushes than Oklahoma did last year. the opportunities are going to be there. The guys that we have returning on the roster are they have a grand total of 179 carries between all of them. Our
Crazy.
two highest rushers, Kennedy Brooks and Caleb Williams, they accounted for 70% of our rushing yards last year. So there's going to be opportunities there. And I just don't know if Eric Gray is the most talented guy that can take over that position the way that I think he would have to be the guy.
Matt?
Yeah, and I meant to say this for my context, for my list, and we're going to go position group by position group. I'm going to do the year of the transfers and newcomers. So I'm going to list at least one transfer guy or a guy that's a freshman coming into the program, because I know one of the main stats that BB talked about was 50-60% of the guys had never played a snap for OU.
Yep.
So this is going to be very important to this year, at least until he gets his recruiting classes in and we have a little bit more of a predictable depth chart. This is what I'm going with. So obviously General Booty was my quarterback I went with, the JUCO transfer. The guy I'm kind of looking at that we transferred from, the only running back, has actually been Tavius Thomas, who's also from Central Florida, who played 30 games and 6'1", 197. He's got a good frame, compiled over 1,100 yards and 13 touchdowns before leaving and transferring here. So like Mark said, there's going to be opportunities. I definitely think Eric Gray and Marcus Majors are going to be the benefactors of that. But there's a couple guys on there, Javonte Barnes, Gavin, those guys. It'll be interesting to see if there's maybe a guy that just kind of comes out, and maybe Bentavious Thomas is that guy, but definitely some opportunities for guys to step in.
I think those two freshman names on this list, Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk, are pretty interesting names as guys who might get some burn like later on in the year. They're true freshmen. You aren't going to throw them out there week 1, week 2, but maybe something happens. Somebody gets banged up, or you need to change a pace down the line in week 6, or after the Texas game. Those are guys who I've heard have performed very well in camp. And they love Sawchuk's speed. They think he's blazing fast. So that's never a bad thing with a running back. But again, these guys are freshmen, and you have, like Mark said, you have experience, but not experience in that room. And I think that the older guys, DeMarco's going to feel more comfortable with. And that's why, in my mind, it's just Eric Gray and Marcus Major. But like always, people get banged up. And I think if and when we get to see a depth chart, you'll see those freshmen a little higher than they probably should be, just because they like how they performed so far in camp.
I also think if a transfer running back is, just to put me against Matt again real fast, if there's a transfer running back that does break out, I don't think it's Bentavious Thompson. I think it's Tawi Walker, who transferred from Palomar College in California to JUCO. Love my JUCO transfers: Ramondre Stevenson, Dede Westbrook, Hollywood Brown. These guys just Perrion Winfrey. These guys they perform for us. We know which ones to take on. And Tawi Walker showed us in the spring game that he is very capable, that even against the higher level of defense, and sure, they're still learning the defense, but he's still learning the offense. It's mano a mano at that point. He was able to keep it up. He caught the ball really well in that game. I think that if there is an opening at the running back position, like I said, we don't have a lot of returning carries. That guy is someone who has shown it against people, similar to what General Booty did at the quarterback position. Maybe Tawi Walker's the guy. He's 5'9", 220, a little bowling ball.
Yeah.
I think like in my opinion, this position is Eric Gray's to lose. I just think he's a senior. I think our O-line is going to be better this year. I think he has to prove himself. Absolutely. And I think it's going to be between him and Marcus Major. I mean, that just makes the most sense. But I think you put him first, and I think he's going to get most of the carries at the start of the season. If he holds up like I expect him to, I think he'll be our leading rusher.
I think that's a fair assessment. Remember, comment below if you have another guy that you think is going to stick out at each of these positions we're talking about. Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
So one more interesting thing that I saw when I was researching is that Ole Miss had 4 players Matt Corral plus 3 of their running backs hit 100 or more carries. We only had that out of Kennedy Brooks last year. Yeah. Eric Gray only had 78. He barely broke 100 touches last year. So again, just a lot of big shoes to fill there. And the carries are going to be there to give.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Let's move on to some wide receivers right now. Besides the main 3 that we know are going to see playing time, and that's Theo Weiss, Marvin Mims, and Drake Stoops. Guys, I'm fired up about Jaden Gibson. I'm all in on the OU hype videos of him just making catches and out jumping people. That is something that I love because CD is one of my favorite OU receivers ever. And it's just because he could out physical and outrun you on any part of the field. No one could cover him. And I feel like now that's a bold statement to say Jaden's only a freshman,
High
but
bar.
like, huh?
High bar.
I know, but like, dude, I'm fired up. He's a guy that I'm fired up about. And I want to know what you guys think. Who else is out there that you have your eye on?
I think this position group is just so exciting. Like there's just so much potential here, because we do have like, the big 3 that you talked about. I also think Farouk is going to get big numbers this year also. Like going back to Mark's take, I think in the spring, we have weapons, but you can, with what DG is able to do with his arm, I think Lebby is going to be able to be creative with some of these newcomers, like you're saying with Gibson, with Freeman. Like I have one more position on our list on the defensive side that I think is going to have a heavy impact with like freshmen, but this one, I think especially, they're going to get a few reps and we're going to be able to do some really creative things, I think, with them.
Matt, what you got, man?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think we've talked about Theo Weiss enough. And, I'm going to go technicalities here, but technically he did enter the transfer portal and then decided to stay with OU. So that's kind of my guy that is coming back per se. And I've talked about multiple times, Marvin Mims has got to be the clear-cut number 1. He's the best wide receiver on the team. He needs the ball more than 30 times than what he did last year. But I think that also only benefits Theo Weiss, who is obviously proven. We've seen what happens in big games. Theo Weiss comes through. Good hands, good route running. This guy, I think both him and Mims are going to have a pretty good duo season at wide receiver. If DG can come through in the O-line, give him some time to throw. I'm really excited about those guys. Like you said, Farouk in the Oregon game, I think showed a lot too. So I'm right there with Tyson. This is an exciting group. It'll be interesting to see what kind of play calling and who gets involved and how they get involved.
So before we get to you, Mark, sorry. I do want to say this because I meant to say it last week. We can love Drake Stoops for the player that he is and for his last name. If he is our best receiver or he gets the ball as much as he got it last year, we're not going to be a better team than we were last year. I love Drake Stoops. I think he's a talented wide receiver. He does not need to be your go-to guy because he is not Wes Welker. He is not Danny Amendola out there. He's just another guy. Can he be your third best receiver? 100% in my opinion. Yes. But if he is the go-to guy on third downs or second and longs, I think that's the wrong thing. And I hope he proves me wrong. I do. But that's my opinion.
But Mace, he's like Mr. Consistent, right?
I know.
Like it's like he catches the ball when you throw it to him. If you have like a 3rd and 3 and you're going to throw the ball instead of run it in Levy's offense, like you want to throw it to someone who's going to catch it with like, obviously that is a stupid statement to say out loud, but he's our Mr. Reliable, I think. And I don't necessarily think we would be a worse team if he was like our main dude, because I think we're going to see a lot of improvement on the defensive side as well. But like overall, I think you're right. Like there's more talented wide receivers. We need to leverage them better. We need to utilize them better. But I just want to give credit to my boy Drake Stoops because he is Mr. Reliable and he catches the ball when you don't think he's going to catch the ball. And that's a really, really great skill set to have.
Yeah.
So I had 3 guys or 3 big things that I wanted to like hit on, right?
Oh, no.
And one of them was Theo Weiss, the return of Theo Weiss. I think so. If you just took his 2020 stats as a sophomore, he would have had and put them against last year, right? He would have had the second most catches, the second most yards, and tied for the third most touchdowns as a sophomore, as all of our guys did last year in his absence. And he's a year older. He's a father now, and he's really resonated with the new coaching staff. And those are things that matter to some players. Shout out D.D. Westbrook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some players. And he seems to be someone who has grown from that experience and is approaching football in a little bit more grown up of a way. So right on with Matt on that. I think he was a 5-star for a reason. He was showing so much promise. Let's get him in an offense that's going to toss the ball around and let him be big. Mason, your thing about Jaden Gibson, Nick Anderson too. I think it's really interesting, both of those guys. I think it's going to be hard for both of them to get on the field a bunch because they both play kind of the same. I mean, Nick Anderson's 6'4". Yeah. He's not much smaller than Jaden Gibson. And the things that I've heard are that he might be a little bit more ready right out of the gate than Jaden is. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And my big number 3 thing, it's so fun that it's this, is Drake Stoops is going to take a step back this year. I'm pretty confident in it. I also was shocked to find he only had 16 catches last year.
Wow.
Doesn't it feel like
more
volume?
How many targets?
But I think that's
I only have catches.
Okay.
No, but I think that's to Ryan's point. And Ryan, that's fair because he did make catches when you needed him to. And I think those 16 catches, probably like 10 of them were first downs when we like had to have them.
Yeah.
And the other 6 were probably bubble screens that Lincoln loved, or something like that. I don't know. But I
think it depends. Like Mark, I kind of agree with you for like taking a step back, but I think it also depends on like what you mean by that. Like, what does it mean to take a step back? Because I think for someone like Drake Stoops, if you're making those big catches like he did last year, like that might be enough. I mean, this guy is not going to be an all-star NFL receiver, right?
So for me, it's playing time. It's opportunity.
Got it.
So I'll be surprised if he's not on the field on the majority of third downs. But if that's all you're doing, then you're not someone you're going to nearly as often as we will Marvin Mims or Jaleel Farouk or Theo Weiss. So that's kind of where I was at with it. I also, just because I did the research and I want to shout him out, JJ Hester out of the Tulsa area. He's a transfer from Arkansas. He's another big bodied 6'4" guy. And I mean, maybe the change of scenery is all he needed, maybe he's the one who can take that big, tall X receiver role, as well as one of those freshmen.
Okay, let's move on to some tight ends. Matt Gann, tell me if I should care about anybody other than Braden Willis.
You should. And the guy I chose, transfer, Daniel Parker, 6'2", 250. And I think listen, guys, I've seen some pictures. This man is jacked. He looks like he might be a linebacker. I was actually surprised.
Scary.
I think he was mic'd up during one of the practice sessions. And it's always great when players are mic'd up. It's hilarious to listen to. But Daniel Parker was mic'd up, and I legit didn't even recognize him at the moment. You can tell that these guys have just had a massive offseason. And he's gotten some good numbers from Missouri. I think he's going to be more of a blocking tight end because I think Brandon Willis is more of the catching receiver out of the duo. But I think he's going to get some good time, and we need to buff up the offensive line, especially during the run game. And I think Daniel Parker is going to be an absolute great fit for that in duo with Brandon Willis.
Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm pretty sure I picked Braden Willis this year to win potentially the top tight end of the year.
I think you did.
Yeah, I think I did. So
15 catches last year.
I'm very high on Braden Willis this year, guys. I don't really have a reason to be, but I'm just like extremely high on him. And I think like this is his year that he is going to be utilized. I've just seen for so many years, this Oklahoma offense has had so many great tight ends that we've been able to utilize to get to championship games. And I just see this being Willis's year. I also really like this is a heavy freshman class for tight ends, right? I mean, you got Caden Helms, you got Jason Lewin, like some people are coming in, Llewellyn, however you say his name. You got people coming in, big guys, 6'5". I think they're both 6'5". Like Jason's like 250 something, I think. I mean, again, like I said this with the wide receiver group, but there's a lot of freshmen that are coming into this class that I think can make an impact, not only on the offensive side, but on the defensive side.
That's the thing, is the freshman at this position. I think Braden Willis isn't a known commodity. I think there's a lot to tap into there, but I also think we've seen Braden Willis play really well. It's just that last year was the weirdest year in OU history.
Yeah.
And he was also playing alongside Jeremiah Hall, who basically played the same position, but could do a little bit more. Yeah, right. Like could do
same position,
more,
but didn't.
Yeah, like Braden Willis just, there were less opportunities.
Yeah,
is the big thing. I'll be excited to see how someone as physically gifted as he is can translate to being the clear number one receiving option at tight end. I also think one of these freshmen are going to get the chance to make a name for themselves, and it'll be interesting to see who that ends up being, what ends up happening there. I get Mark Andrews vibes like crazy out of Jason Llewellyn. He just, that big old corn-fed white guy looking vibe is he wants to plop down 8 yards off the line of scrimmage and catch a football and get tackled. And I love that so much. So between him and Helms, excited to see maybe someone step up.
So for me, Braden Willis has got to get better at blocking. It's a position that does two things, and you got to block and you got to catch, and he can't block that well. That's why I didn't play last year. That's why it was Jeremiah Hall, and it was Jeremiah Hall's job to lose. This year it's Braden's job to lose. He knows what was in front of him. He knows he had to get better blocking. He's still the number one tight end on the roster, so you got to assume that he got at least somewhat better. The receiving has never been an option. We know he's talented enough to catch the ball and score when he needs to, but he's got to be able to block. And if he can't, I think they're going to, like Mark said, put in one of these young guys or put in the transfer like Matt said. He knows what's in front of him. He's a 4-year guy. They're not going to save his feelings if it's going to hurt the team. Like he's got to be better. And I think he will be. I don't know how much better, but he'll be better.
I remember the reports early on Daniel Parker out of camp were that he was catching the ball better than they expected, really? Better than they thought he would. So
that's good.
Yeah, I hope that Braden Willis is blocking pretty good.
I know. I don't know. I legit don't know, but we'll find out. All right, guys, we're going to do the offensive line, but we're going to do it all 5 positions. So we're not going to go through left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle, unless Mark wants to. Seems like he's ready to do that.
No, I put them all as O-line.
Yeah. Okay, good. So we're just going to go through some offensive linemen you like, some you may not like. We'll start with Ryan. Go ahead, buddy. He wasn't ready.
He wasn't ready. So I'm going to be honest with you guys. I wasn't ready, but here's what I'm going to say. He's not going to probably play this year, but Jake Taylor, I'm pretty sure went to my high school, and I just have to give a shout out to that.
I think he's going to play this year.
You think he's going to play this year?
I mean, I don't know if he's going to be like in the starting 5 this year, but yeah.
He's pretty. Has he gained some weight yet?
He's 6'6", 293. That's not small. He's a freshman
300 though.
Last year, that wasn't small. So
I know this is a different team.
I know. I'm just saying for a freshman coming in, that's not bad. I think Tyler Guyton is 6'7", 315.
Massive.
That's a big man.
I want him to be all over the place.
Yeah.
Let him play fullback. Just do stuff.
Oh, I know.
Just do stuff. Apparently, all of our transfers, him, McCade Matower, and is there a third one, or am I just making that up? Just those two?
Well,
how about you ask the transfer guy, because that is
he's ready. Bang! Get on it. Circle the wagons with some transfers. Come on.
Yeah, I told you, Mark, it's the year of the transfers, and I think these guys will make immediate impacts. Taylor Guyton coming from TCU, 6'6". I think you said 315. That's a big boy. Played 8 games for the Horned Frogs last year, and then became a tour. You said coming from California, was all 12 or all Pac-12 second team, 6'4", over 305 pounds. These are some big boys, and it reminds me a little bit of the team that won the Joe Moore Best Offensive Line group. These guys were big, they were physical, and they were punishing people. That is what I want to see. I want them to move people and absolutely make some holes and protect DG. I think those guys will definitely make an immediate impact and definitely give some depth to the offensive line as well.
The next great Oklahoma center is already here. We started with Gabe Eichert. Then we moved to Ty Darlington. And then it was Creed Humphrey. And now it's Andrew Rame. Andrew Rame is all of those offensive lines that were led by those guys that I just mentioned were fantastic offensive lines. And that's because the guy centering and anchoring that offensive line was one of the better ones on that field. Not better in terms of going to be the best NFL pro or anything like that. A leader that you need at the center position. And they believe in Andrew Rame. He's a third-year player. He's going to be a third-year starter, going to be a 4-year starter because he's going to come back next year. And he's massive. He got bigger, stronger, faster. He's going to be the anchor of this offensive line, and I cannot wait to see him bully some people because he looks good out there. I'm ready for Andrew Rame.
I need to make a correction. I got the freshman Jakes mixed up. Jacob Sexton went to my high school. So man, that's the dude I'm rooting for.
Okay. I like it, Ryan.
It's an old starting 5 now, and I like that. It looks like everyone that we have is going to be at least a redshirt sophomore or older. I couldn't tell you everyone's game experience, but that is something that gives me a little bit more confidence than the reverse, where you've got a bunch of young guys trying to figure it out together.
Yeah.
So
I think that goes back to young guys figuring it out together. Bill Beanbo has a guy at his center position who's locked in, who knows how Bill Beanbo coaches, and that's a guy Bill can go to and be like, we got to get our stuff together. And Andrew's going to be like, it's time to get our stuff together. And they're going to listen to him because he's a guy who's been there, done that, and he's older now. So that's why another reason why I'm excited about Andrew. Anybody else on the offensive side?
I mean, I also am just excited to see like this offensive line this year, with Schmitty, we weren't great last year. Obviously that is very clear, and there's some big changes that need to happen on the O-line. And we still are not sure exactly how they're going to be. So I'm just insanely excited to see this, because this is what OU and Beanbow has been known for, is great offensive lines. And if we're going to win another championship, we need one.